Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Coin Republic podcast. My name is Shor Bhattacharya. The insurance industry in general, we use it in different financial sectors, especially life and health. But blockchain and Web3 wouldn't hedge its risks without insurance. Today, we're going to talk about that in detail. We have the world's first regulated insurance service for non-custodial smart contract risks, which is also called slashing risks. They're backed by Sampo, which is Japan's second biggest insurance provider, and they're reinsured by Munich Re. All the way from Chainproof, we have the one and only Mr. Sebi Banescu. Welcome to the screen, sir.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Saurav. Pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. So, a little bit, first of all, I want to know where you're from, where you calling from.
I'm based in Munich, Germany.
Munich. So no wonder Germany has been fantastic with their automobile sector, the engineering sector, as well as the insurance sector. How's the Web3 scene in Germany? Because all I hear from that region is Switzerland with Zug. So how is Germany doing in the Web3 sector?
Oh, it's doing great. I think we're seeing a lot of innovation here, especially when it comes to the insurance of this risk. So we were lucky enough to be, in close proximity to Munich Re, and create like a very good relationship with them. So yeah, I would say in terms of insurance, we're in the right place to deal with the right players.
Mm.
And other than that, I think like a lot of big projects have been incubated in Germany because even the early days of Ethereum, people were in Switzerland and also Berlin. So it's pretty good, I would say.
Let's talk about you for a second. Your background. What was your background pre-Web3, and what was your biggest motivation to join crypto field, considering it was not so lucrative few years back?
Yeah, so my background is fairly technical. I have a computer science bachelor, master's, and PhD. I focused a lot on security, computer security, software security. And after graduating, I went to work in large enterprise, which is very typical around these parts. And I realized that the things there were moving very slowly, and for good reason. There's a lot of risk in large enterprises, so you can't just do the most innovative things because things might go south. And I got a whiff of Web3. As soon as the DAO hack happened back in 2016, I started looking into it. And then I was lucky enough to be approached by one of the founders of QuantStamp
Mm.
for a security researcher position there. And of course, at the time, it seemed very risky to move from a traditional enterprise job at BMW to a crypto startup. Um, But once I, got to know what the team was working on, how they were working, it was so important, for me. And I just took a leap of faith in 2018, quit my job, quit my corporate job, and joined QuantStamp full time. So it was it was more for the love for this fast paced industry where there's a lot of innovation. Me myself having a very strong research background, I just couldn't resist.
That is absolutely phenomenal. We're going to come to what chain proof does in a minute. I think let's dive right into it. That would be better. Chain proof, I believe, mandates real-time monitoring and alerting for smart contracts. Now, how does this feature work, and what measure does chain proof take in the event of a suspected hack to minimize policy losses?
Yeah, so it's a very good question because in addition to a traditional audit, we believe that real-time monitoring is crucial to be able to detect these kind of 0 days, right? And whenever there's any suspicious activity, right, we don't know yet if it's a false positive or a true positive. We ask that our customers give us access to a pausing feature or anything that could pause or interrupt the transactions on those contracts so that we can investigate further. And that is how we mitigate the impact of a 0 day. We basically pause, investigate, and if everything looks good, if it's a false positive, we just unpause. But if it's a real thing, if it's a real attack, we can go in, propose a fix to the smart contract, upgrade the smart contract, and then unpause, right? Without the malicious attack contract doing any damage, right? Because our goal, is not just to provide insurance, but our goal is that you don't suffer any loss at all.
Mhm,
We prefer to keep your reputation intact, right?
mhm.
And therefore, we consider ourselves more than just a insurance provider. We consider ourselves as a security partner.
Security. Okay. Yeah, correct. So now, I mean, you have had your background solid over here. Let's dial it down a little bit for people who want to understand what you guys actually do. How big is the insurance sector for Web3 products? You specifically cater to non-custodial services. Why is that? Not non-custodial service. Why is that? If you could
Yeah,
clarify it.
of course. Yeah, yeah. So insurance in Web3 has been around for a few years. And, you know, the custodial part has been tackled first, right? So we've already heard a few years ago that companies such as Coinbase have
Mm,
insurance policies for their custodial cold wallets, more recently for like more hot wallets. This is for us, since it's like 5 years ago, it's already considered pretty mainstream in crypto.
mhm.
And the piece that was missing was how can you ensure the non-custodial smart contracts, right? Because
Uh,
this is such a new risk, right? Custody has to
right.
do a lot with traditional infrastructure, things that you can assess with something like an ISO 27001 certificate or a SOC 2 certificate, right? But with smart contracts, there's nothing, there's no certification really, right? There's just smart contract audits, but those are not really certificates. Those are just like security assessments, right? So the insurance industry has been shying away from insuring this risk. Of course, you have crypto native cover providers, but those are definitely very different from insurance providers, right? Because they're not regulated and there's no guarantee that you will get your claim. With no traditional insurance, there's a legal entity, there's a regulator behind the company, and you can, if you're not happy with how you're treated, how your claim is processed, you can take that insurance provider to court, right? There's an actual responsibility there as an insurance provider, right? So this is what was missing in the space, right? And we were seeing a lot of customers, as I started initially at Quantstamp doing security audits back in 2018, I realized there were a lot of customers asking for insurance. And that's how we, started looking into creating Chainproof, and we started talking to a lot of traditional insurance companies, but they were very hesitant to put any capacity behind it, right? They always required us to have skin in the game. So what we did is we put skin in the game here. We put some funds on the line. We created Chainproof together with Sampo as a joint venture.
So,
And
for was it bootstrapped in the initial stage, and then you got Sample and other big players on the bed,
yeah,
or
yeah,
what was the initial journey like? If you could elaborate on that.
totally, totally. So initially we just built, the smart contracts for an unregulated coverage solution. There are many on the market. And when we wanted to launch it, our legal counsel advised against it because an insurance regulator could come after you and shut you down, right? So we wanted to go the regulated, safe, and slow way, so that this is a very long-term endeavor and not something that could just get shut down overnight. So the initial idea was not to get the license; it was to convince other insurance companies to back us, right, and use their license to write this kind of policy. But that didn't work well because these traditional insurance companies typically do not have Web3 security experts on their payroll, right? And it's very hard to get them because typically if you look at crypto Twitter and you see what kind of expectations Web3 security experts have, they're not very much in line with the traditional insurance company, right? So it's very unlikely that one of these companies would be able to create a team of experts, and that's where QuantStamp came in as service provider for these kind of security services, and joined forces, with Sampo to create Chainproof, right? And we created the entity back in 2021, and we started working on the license application, right? And it took more than 6 months to create the entire suite of documents that needed to be submitted and to go through the review process with the regulator. And finally, in 2022, like mid 2022, we got our license and we
Mm.
could start writing business, right? But 2022, as we all know, was not the
No,
greatest year for crypto.
yeah, yeah.
However, like 2023 has started to pick up, and we're seeing a lot of interest from many projects.
Fantastic. Yeah, that was definitely a volatile time. How do you see volatility? Because you guys are hedging against volatility, and crypto is perhaps one of the most volatile markets out there. So, how do you see the volatility in the coming years, especially with Bitcoin and other altcoins? If you could, from your standpoint, from your business perspective.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not entirely sure what you mean about hedging the volatility, because what we insure against is just the hacking risk of these smart contracts, right? If you have your
The
DeFi
hacking
project,
risks.
yeah, yeah. So basically, if you have something like a DeFi platform, think about Compound, Aave, Uniswap, right? And you deposit something, you create a position in one of these smart contracts. We can ensure that, if that contract gets hacked, you can get your funds back, right? That's what our insurance provides.
Okay, so because you guys play with probability, how probable is getting your account hacked on chain, especially on a non-custodial ecosystem, which you
Yeah.
insure? How often does it happen?
Well, of course, not all DeFi platforms are the same. If you want to take the overall probability, across all platforms, and if you want to take sort of the maximum probability there, it's pretty high because you see hacks happening every week, sometimes multiple times a week, right? Just last week we saw several big ones, right? But if you're someone who has a very good security background and you have Web3 experts, then you can distinguish which platforms are more likely to get hacked than others, right? And this is our secret sauce, right? This is how we decide which platforms we underwrite and which ones we don't. Because definitely, I can say not all DeFi platforms are the same when it comes to security.
Fair enough. And everyone wants on-chain parametric insurance for their crypto assets at a very low price. In a recent LinkedIn post of yours, you said Chainproof is working towards that. Can you tell us about that and how in fact impactful it is for a common user?
Yeah, totally. So what parametric insurance means is that you don't need to go through a lengthy claims process, but you just have some kind of oracle that determines what the loss was, and you can get your claim instantly, right? You don't have to wait. And this is very difficult for a DeFi platform, especially because we've seen so many hackers that return the funds or partially return the funds, after a period of negotiation. Or maybe the authorities get hold of the funds a bit later, somehow catching the attacker. This has happened back in, as early as 2021, where I remember I think it was the Index Finance hacker got doxxed because he was posting something on Stack Overflow or something like that, and they found a match between his usernames on Discord and Stack Overflow, and then were able to locate him, right? And the funds were recovered eventually. So this could happen. Of course, the hacker themselves, it happened several times. The hacker returned the funds after the hack and maybe kept a bounty, right? So it's very difficult to create parametric insurance because we can, of course, determine how much was lost initially, but we cannot determine easily how much is going to be recovered, right? However, for you mentioned before, there's this concept of slashing insurance. So slashing insurance is different. That is for node operators, so like proof of stake chain validators, right? Who stake funds, and if they have some kind of like issue and double sign a block,
Mm.
then they get slashed, right? And in this case, we could think about how to create more appropriate parametric insurance, right? We're also working towards the former, parametric insurance for DeFi, but that is still a bit difficult nowadays.
Can you elaborate on the significance of Chainproof being licensed by Bermuda Monetary Authority and how it reflects the company's commitment to regulatory standards in the DeFi space?
Of course, yeah. So we were registered in Bermuda at Sampo's guidance because they were very much aware that Bermuda has a very advanced legislation when it comes to digital assets. So they were probably the first country to enforce, and have proper legislation in place for digital asset businesses as early as 2018, right? And back in 2018, many countries were still very skeptical about digital assets and blockchain, right? So we started talking to the BMA, the Bermudian Monetary Authority, back in 2021. And because they had this legislation in place, they were not shocked when we told them that we would like to insure these kind of risks that we were just talking about, right? Because we, of course, went to other jurisdictions as well, right? And we talked to regulators about this. And everyone was very shocked about, us wanting to start an insurance company for this. But in Bermuda, they were still like on the fence, but they were open to it, right? They, especially with a backer like Sampo, they definitely were willing to listen, and I wanted to just be give a shout out and thanks to the BMA for guiding us through the regulations for the past 2 years now. We've been meeting with them on a monthly basis, providing updates, and they have been, very patiently guiding us through all of the regulatory requirements that we need to fulfill as an insurance company.
Mhm. For some of the viewers who are still confused about how do you guys operate, Chainproof mandates real-time monitoring and alerting for smart contracts, correct?
Yeah.
So how does this feature work? Could you tell us in detail? And what measures do you guys take in the event of a suspectful hack to minimize policyholder issues? A little bit on detail.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we touched about upon this a bit in the beginning of the conversation, but
Yeah.
one thing that we do in order to make sure that a project is insurable is that we first do an audit. We use our partner at Quantstamp to perform the smart contract audit, and
Okay.
after the audit, we make sure that all of the issues are properly fixed, because the big problem that we see, with many projects that get hacked is that the most of the time the issues that are found in the audit were not fixed, right? And
Okay.
once the contract is deployed, like you just mentioned, real-time monitoring is crucial, and we use our partners at Hypernative for the real-time monitoring. And this basically can detect if a malicious contract is deployed by an attacker.
Oh, can you still hear me? Yeah. So
Yeah, I can
if
hear you. Yeah.
the victim is you know one of our customers, we immediately pause those contracts and then start an investigation into the reason of the suspicious activity, and
Hmm.
this way we can mitigate attacks even before the funds are drained.
Got it. Your exclusive partnership with Quantstamp. Now, you mentioned you worked there before. So, how does that contribute to the security and reliability of its smart contract insurance offering of Chainproof's offerings?
Right. So this is sort of Chainproof's DNA, right? Because Chainproof is, you know, a spin-off and from Quantstamp, right? And most of the people working at Chainproof have been working at Quantstamp for some time. Therefore, everyone is very much security aware. Of course, we also have insurance experts at Quantstamp who've been working in the insurance industry for, like many years. And this combination allows us to do a proper risk assessment, and using Quantstamp's help, and what we typically do after a project is audited is that we have a close discussion with Quantstamp employees about things that you typically cannot write in an audit report, right? Things that have to do with the project team's willingness and readiness to address issues, their maturity, the project's maturity. All of these things are hard to capture in many audit reports. And having this close relationship with the auditor allows us to capture that information and encode it into our actuarial model, which allows us to have a very accurate pricing of the project itself. I would say one of the biggest issues in insuring smart contracts is like, how do you properly price the risk, right? And this is something that we pride ourselves in, because we have this deep technical due diligence of the platforms that we're insuring, and we're not just going off of more generic ratings.
Mhm. So let me get this straight. Hypernative gives real-time monitoring, and QuantStop provides 24/7 incident response and mitigation.
Yeah.
So how do they work together, and how prompt is the response to alerts, especially
Mhm.
in cases for zero-day vulnerabilities? How fast do they react to secure the name smart contracts?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, if you have a monitoring system in place, but you don't have a distributed 24/7 team, right? Then it could happen that an alert, is triggered, but then there's no one that is looking at it, right? And this has happened many times in the industry. I can name examples, but I don't want to, point
No, it's
any
okay.
fingers.
It's okay.
Therefore, it's very important to have either your team or an external team, such as QuantStamp, who has people all over the world, on all of the time zones that
Mm,
can cover 24/7, right? The alerts, right? So when an alert is triggered by Hypernative, someone from QuantStamp will see it and react to it within an hour, right?
mm.
Or even, an hour is the maximum, right? But like we can react on an alert within a few minutes or seconds, right? Depending on who's online, who's available. We always have at least two people who are looking at alerts that are triggered, right? And they can jump on a war room either, independently or with the dev team. Sometimes the dev team, this attack would happen maybe in the middle of the night for the dev team, and someone from QuantStamp would jump on a war room, do the investigation, figure out what the root cause is, and all this time the contracts would be paused, so there would not be any damage, right? Because of the pausing mechanism that would be automatic when a suspicious activity happens. And by the time that the dev team wakes up, their contracts are paused, nothing happened. QuantStamp has basically figured out what the root cause is, and they've already proposed a fix. So the dev team can just take the fix, deploy it on
Mm.
chain, and then unpause the contracts and continue operations without any damage.
Fair enough. So let's talk about let's talk about Bitcoin's movement, right? Bitcoin is currently seeing a small bullish momentum. How much do you think halving an ETF will impact the price and overall ecosystem? And what will it mean to the insurance industry, your particular insurance industry?
Right. So I'm not an expert in the markets, but I think what it will mean, what we're seeing is that more and more projects are launching, which leads to more and more demand for
Right.
insurance, right? So in that sense, it's very positive for us. And what we're hoping is that more and more, regulation comes around in this space, such that more and more institutions enter the space.
Fair enough, fair enough. Since a lot of people might look at this podcast and would definitely want to get in touch with you, learn a lot about you, where can they find you? Where are you most active, uh, except for your website? What social media? Are you active on Discord, Twitter? Where can they find you?
We're probably, as a regulated insurance company, we're most active on LinkedIn because that's where
LinkedIn.
most of the
Yeah.
institutions and potential customers are listening. But we're also active on Twitter. So like Twitter and LinkedIn are probably our most active channels. We don't really have a community on Discord because we're an insurance provider. We don't necessarily build platforms in that same sense, which would require a Discord community.
Hmm.
So we
So,
don't have any token. It's very much a traditional business.
all right, final question. Uh, in a decade from now, how big would you say your industry would have become in terms of like the sheer size of it all?
Wow, 10 years is a very long time from now, I would say. I
Yeah.
was thinking like I could maybe give you a prediction for the next bull market, right?
Okay, let's
I'm
let's go with
thinking
the bull
the
market. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking like in the next bull market, at the top, the total market cap will probably be over 10 trillion, which,
Oh, yeah.
is pretty. I mean, the last time it was over 3 trillion. So like, over 10 trillion is, you know, around the same size as the gold market, right? So I think it's definitely reachable.
Mm-hmm.
But some people might say that's overly optimistic. But I do think once we reach that market cap, um, things will start to be more mainstream, and the drops will not be as significant. I think the big drop last year was mainly due to all of the failing projects, and the fraud that was going on in the space. Hopefully, we're weeding out and we're better at detecting fraudsters, and the industry matures. Especially like my big hope is like regulation. So I'm hoping there's way more regulation and maturity in the next bull market.
Fair enough. And I'll tell you what, we will definitely keep a close eye on your industry, especially you guys. And I appreciate this podcast. Let's stay in touch. Let's see, what you guys are doing ahead.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you for having me. Have a nice one.
Fantastic.